CNN's new poll gives him a 21-point lead over Ted Cruz. That's his nearest competitor. I want to talk about that with Hugh Hewitt, the host of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Shouldn't you be at home, like, cooking a, big pot of turkey stew or something, getting ready for Christmas?
I've already had dinner. West Coast time. We had ham tonight, Don. So I'm pleased to be back in California, and I'm early. You're late.
All righty. So Hugh Hewitt, as they call him, the Donald, leading with 39% in CNN's brand new poll, more than twice the support of Ted Cruz. Is he running away with the nomination? Is that fair to say?
I don't think he's running away with the nomination. He is running away with the polling. And if anyone tells you that they predicted this, they're lying. No one saw this. Donald Trump not only has a lead, he has an enormous lead, 39 to 18%. In fact, the more interesting thing beyond that is if you add up Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Dr. Carson, you've got 67% of the Republicans in the CNN poll voting for a deeply conservative alternative to the next, everyone is elected. Marco Rubio has 10% as well, and you've got Chris Christie in the first tier as well. But I think what you see with 2 out of every 3 Republican voters saying, we want a more conservative Republican clear choice to Hillary Clinton, they definitely do not want to run a center-right candidate at this point in the campaign, and Donald Trump is benefiting from that.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Ben Carson in that, because just did an interview with him. You heard about this so-called shakeup in his campaign today, I am sure. What did you think of his interview and the answers he gave me?
It was fascinating. Dr. Carson is probably the most admired man on either side of the aisle by the most number of people. Everyone respects his integrity, his professionalism, his experience. They also realize that he's a newcomer to the political arena, so there are going to be ups and downs and bumps along the way as he organizes. He's got some brilliant people like Armstrong Williams as his friend. He's got a very good campaign staff. But what you've seen with the rise of ISIS is a concern over foreign affairs expertise. I spoke for 2 hours today on my radio show, Don, with Washington Post reporter Joby Warwick, who has a new book out called Black Flags, The Rise of ISIS. And you have to be blind not to see that the world is facing an imminent and a very dangerous threat from both ISIS and a cheating Iran. And so those candidates who project less forceful personalities on matters of foreign affairs have been slipping in the polls. I'll also add that Ted Cruz has stayed very steady and in some places ahead of Donald Trump, like the Iowa poll, the Des Moines Register poll, because he's as conservative as Dr. Carson, but he also has, I think, more credibility among people who wonder about capacity. I'll note one thing about your interview, which was very good, very interesting, Don. Robert Costa may be the best political reporter in Washington, D.C. Yeah. There's some that are his equal. And so he didn't get it wrong. I just sometimes think that Dr. Carson doesn't fully anticipate how the Washington press corps always looks for the bottom line. They're not nuance-based, right? They're looking for stories, and Robert Costa particularly has built his reputation over the years as being among the best at digging out breaking news. And so I'm a little surprised to hear him critique. Weren't you a little bit surprised to hear him critique?
I was a little bit surprised, and listen, I hate criticizing other reporters because you don't know, you're not there. But I wanted to give him a chance to respond to it, and I asked him a couple of times. Yeah. He said, I think he already had the story written. I said, but didn't you say these things? He is quoting you, and the quote is the best thing because you said it. So yeah.
And he confirmed the quote. He also said, my campaign is not a rat hole. Now, that is genuinely not a good way to have your campaign described, even in the negative. And so there's some basic communication tactics that I think Dr. Carson, who's used to the straightforward talk of a surgery room where life is on the line, he's still getting the hang of the game.
Here's what I think. I think that he probably needed to get the attention of folks in his campaign, and he did. And I'll leave it at that. So then, let's talk.
Very well said.
As you mentioned, Trump also dominates on the issues that are important to voters, on handling the economy. Yeah. You mentioned foreign affairs. Handling the economy, 57%. I'd say Trump is the best. The nearest competitor is Ted Cruz, which is 8%. Illegal immigration, 55% trust Trump. And again, Cruz is second with 15%. On handling ISIS, 47% goes to Trump and 21% for Cruz. That's huge numbers.
They are. We tend in America to elect the person who is least like the present occupant of the office. That's why President Obama, with his sort of one worldish pacifism, succeeded the very warlike George W. Bush. Now people have realized that President Obama brought about this collapse in the Middle East, and you got to go back to Warwick's book, the Syrian civil war, the red line that faded, the collapse of the president's will, his wobbly knees, whatever that is. The opposite of President Obama is Donald Trump. The opposite of President Obama is Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie. That's why you saw during our CNN Salem Media Group debate so much very focused talk about how to fight back against ISIS and the Iranian Hezbollah Assad axis. And I don't think that's Dr. Carson's strength. And if we were talking about Obamacare and the premium skyrocketing, he'd be in a much better position right now. But I don't see the news changing much. I know you're going to cover the story of the British family that was excluded today from the United States. Well, that's, again, a reflection of the issue set that concerns us in the battle for Ramadi. All this talk of war and the rumors of war are assisting a handful of Republicans, and they're Cruz and Trump, Rubio and Christie, and those are the four who are probably best positioned right now to talk to those fears in the American public.
So when you talk about kitchen table talk or dining room table, wherever you have your meal or prepare your meal, I think people are going to go into this holiday, they'll be talking about Trump, they'll be talking about Hillary Clinton, Carson, and Ted Cruz, and, you know, the kids and the cartoon and all that. But the front runner, who is Donald Trump, has a lot of people, even prominent conservatives, calling him vulgar for some of his remarks, especially some of his remarks about Hillary Clinton lately, the bathroom visit and all of that, and using the remark schlonged. I never thought I'd say that term on television so much. Were those remarks, you think, over the line?
Well, in the modern media, nothing is really over the line. I mean, a lot of times I'll turn on television, I'll see Bill Maher is still frequently featured on regular news shows, and he's used the most vulgar and obscene comments about former Governor Palin that I've ever seen. I won't go on his show.
But he's not running for president of the United States.
I know he's not running for president, but the television, there isn't really a line that a candidate can cross. I am much more offended that Hillary Clinton made up a lie about Donald Trump being in an ISIS video than I am by Donald Trump's use of colloquialisms that I don't use and you don't use. But I think our priorities ought to be, Hillary Clinton was lying on Saturday night when she invented this second time. She used a video narrative. First time her video narrative to distort the truth was about Benghazi. The second time it was about Donald Trump. That's a little pathological, and I think people ought to be more concerned about that than they ought to be about Donald Trump's
Okay, here's what I have to say, and there is no proof of what she's saying is true, right? There is no proof. But
she lied.
Okay,
it's not about not being true. She lied.
All right, so I'll give you that. She lied. You're saying she lied in your words, so I'll give you that. But I asked you the same question about thousands and thousands of Muslims for Donald Trump. You didn't say it was a lie. You said that's what he recalled. So how is that different?
And there's an objective difference between those two things. In the one case, there is none. It was fact-checked by the Washington Post and the New York Times the very next day that Hillary Clinton lied about that video. She said a video existed, the video doesn't exist. Donald Trump exaggerated, which is a huge difference between an outright fabrication having to do with someone being a pawn of propagandists in the pursuit of absolute fanatical evil, and Donald Trump commenting on what was concerning to him in New Jersey on 9/11, about which he and I don't agree. I don't think there's any evidence for that. But memory can't be fact-checked, whereas Hillary Clinton's claim of a video was and can be completely. So I think, Don, what we see
But Hillary Clinton, okay, so you're doing nuance here. Hillary Clinton's can't listen, I'm not making an excuse. Let me finish, and then you can jump in. I'm not making an excuse for Hillary Clinton. I don't think it was the truth. But what her campaign said was she's talking about overall people online, and they're showing it on Arabic-speaking media around the world. You're saying Donald Trump. So why is it a flat-out lie for Hillary Clinton and not a flat-out lie for Donald Trump when there is no evidence that there were thousands and thousands of people, no evidence, no video, no nothing?
Because he said that's what he recalled.
Said it's not true as well.
Don, this is not nuanced. When Donald Trump talks about what he remembers, you cannot fact-check memory. I spent a lot of time going over this on the air with a lot of people. That's what he recalls. You know, you can put him on a polygraph and find out if he's making that up or not. I don't think it happened. I don't believe it happened. There were I think Rudy Giuliani said on CNN, a couple of incidents, and we had a couple other people confirm a handful here and a handful there. So he's wrong. But that's different from a cold-blooded lie about a video that does not exist. And here's what the most important thing is. The most important thing is that Hillary Clinton presided over the collapse of American foreign policy, which led to the rise of ISIS, which led to the destruction of Syria and Iraq and the ruining of the peace. President Obama and Hillary Clinton have a record from which they are running. All of the Republicans, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, all of the Republicans, Carly Fiorina, they want to run on those issues. So I hope at Christmas time dinner, people sit around and talk about the threats to the United States.